All right, we're going to go ahead and continue talking a little bit about U.S. expansion and imperialism, and we're going to go ahead and talk about that in terms of two territories the United States grew into: Hawaii and Puerto Rico. In the case of Puerto Rico was initially invaded when the United States got embroiled in the Spanish-American War, and the war was ended by the Treaty of Paris of 1898. And as a result of that treaty, one of the territories, amongst many, that the United States got was Puerto Rico. We were interested in Puerto Rico because it was a Caribbean base that we could use to help protect our new investment, the Panama Canal, or what we're looking to build as part of the Panama Canal. It was one of the things we were looking to invest in. And when we go ahead and gain the territory, we have to decide how we want to govern it. And that leads to the passage of the Four Acre Act of 1900, which basically explains how we govern Puerto Rico. The governor is appointed by the president. The upper house would be kind of like our Senate, also appointed by the president. But the Puerto Ricans themselves get, for the first time, to really elect part of their government. They elect the lower house, which would equate to the House of Representatives in our Congress today. That stays that way for about 50 years, and then in 1950, Puerto Rico becomes what's called a Commonwealth. When Puerto Rico becomes a Commonwealth, which is just a different type of territory the United States controls, the Puerto Ricans are made into U.S. citizens. Basically, what it means to be a Commonwealth, it means the U.S. controls everything that goes on outside of Puerto Rico's borders. We control Puerto Rico's defense, we control goods coming in and out of Puerto Rico, and we control relations between Puerto Rico and other nations. In return, Puerto Rico controls everything that goes on inside the country or the island. So all their laws are unique kind of to Puerto Rico, their finances, so their tax system, all that stuff. Puerto Ricans don't pay tax to the IRS, things like that. And so they get to basically come up with their own laws and things like that inside the island as a result of becoming a Commonwealth. Hawaii is a slightly different story. Hawaii we didn't get as part of the Spanish-American War. Our interest in Hawaii first begins actually when sailors are attempting to cross the Pacific Ocean, and this is back during the day of sail. When I say sailors, these are guys who actually are on sail-powered ships. And it turns out the Pacific Ocean is absolutely enormous. It takes forever to get across it, and in fact, you really couldn't carry enough supplies, enough fresh water in particular, to make it all the way across. You needed some place to stop, and it turns out, well, Hawaii's about halfway there. And so it made for a really good place to stop. And so the sailors would originally stop there to pick up fresh supplies. And later, when they started to use coal-powered or steam-powered ships, they would go ahead and use Hawaii as a fueling station as well. And really, the sailors and the Hawaiians got along okay. That was no big deal. The sailors came and they left, and the Hawaiians were happy when they came. They brought news from the outside. They brought stuff that the Hawaiians couldn't otherwise get. It was okay. And it stays that way for a while. And then in the 1820s, another group shows up, the missionaries. Again, more white guys. And the Hawaiians and the missionaries actually get along pretty well. The missionaries are coming there because they want to spread Christianity, because they want to build hospitals and schools. And so the Hawaiians are like, okay, we can, the hospitals and schools, you take care of us when we're sick and teach us how to read and write. We're okay with that. And the missionaries and the Hawaiians got along pretty well. Things don't start to get a little dicey really until the 1850s, when another group of white folks show up. These guys are the sugar growers, and they're looking to make money in Hawaii. They think Hawaii would be a great place to go ahead and grow sugar and to export it back to the United States and sell it. This is when things start to break down a little bit. The sugar growers, when they first show up, they need somebody to work on the sugar plantations that they're building. It's a very labor-intensive thing to grow sugar and to harvest it, and so they need lots of laborers. And at first, they try to go and recruit the Hawaiians. And the Hawaiians are like, okay, they'll go work. And they go ahead and they work there for like a day. And they figure out, okay, I can work all day, breaking my back, bending over, swinging a machete to hack down sugarcane, which I don't really eat, to get paid money that I don't really use in the hot, and get sweaty, and come back and be dog tired. Or I can go spend the day with my family and fish and surf all day on the beach. That didn't take them long to figure out. And so the Hawaiians leave, and all those sugar growers are like, oh, shoot, we need a workforce. And so they start recruiting people, particularly Chinese, Japanese, and Puerto Ricans, to come to Hawaii. And before long, the Hawaiians are actually a minority on their own island. The Hawaiians don't control immigration in and out of the country, and as a result of that, they end up losing control over their own island as this huge population shift begins to occur and begins to happen. Politically, as we start to go ahead, as the sugar growers start to sell more and more stuff to the United States, they become closer to the United States. And the United States starts influencing what goes on in Hawaii. In particular, the wealthy sugar growers start to influence, and it really results in a loss of Hawaiian control. And this is probably exemplified in no better place than in an agreement signed between the then king of Hawaii, Kalakaua, and the United States, where the U.S. is given rights to Pearl Harbor to use as a naval base in 1887. And further, the king signs a constitution which establishes voting requirements that means you have to own land to vote, you have to have wealth to vote. This constitution is really forced by the white business owners, and it's really a bad deal for the Native Hawaiians because the Native Hawaiians don't really own land, and they're not wealthy. So now who gets to vote? Well, it's all the wealthy white sugar growers. And the Hawaiians, again, are losing more and more control of their own island. And things probably would have gone that way, except for the fact that King Kalakaua dies. And his sister, Queen Liliuokalani, takes over. Well, Queen Liliuokalani is a pretty smart cookie. She, in fact, was educated by those missionaries who came, and she understood European history. She knew how to read and write. And she took one look at the Constitution. She's like, this is not a good deal for us. She doesn't like the pushy white guys. And she decides, you know what? I'm a pretty smart lady. I can take matters into my own hands. And she writes a new Constitution, which basically establishes voting requirements, meaning you had to be a native-born Hawaiian. So now the sugar growers are out, and the Queen and the Hawaiians are back in control. And the sugar growers knew this. And so they go ahead and they orchestrate a coup, a takeover, and they place the Queen under house arrest. The guys, and here's a picture of the Queen. The guys who orchestrate this include people like John L. Stevens, who was the U.S. Minister to Hawaii. They include people like Sanford B. Dole, Dole Fruit, Dole Pineapples, stuff like that. That's him. They go ahead, they get together, and they're the ones who kind of organize the rebellion against the Queen. And as soon as they go ahead, they put the Queen under house arrest. They declare themselves independent, and they go ahead and write a note that they want to be annexed by the United States and become part of the United States. This is done just as much for economic as it is political reasons. The other thing that was going on here during this time period was that the Spanish-American War was happening, and Cuba was becoming a protectorate. And all of a sudden, Cuban sugar was going to be really cheap, and the Hawaiians realized they were getting cut out of this deal. That the Cuban sugar wasn't going to have to pay import duties, and they had to figure out a way, if they wanted to remain competitive with Cuban sugar, to get around these duties as well. And one of the ways was to become a state. So there was economic interest here as well as political going on. So John L. Stevens and Sanford B. Dole go ahead and they call in some Marines that happen to be offshore there in a Navy ship, and they go ahead and they overthrow the Queen. They put her under house arrest. Write a letter to then President Grover Cleveland wanting to be annexed. And Grover Cleveland was, you want to be annexed? What? And so he's like, what the heck is going on there? So he sends a commission out there, and they investigate what happens. They come back and they say, hey, here's what happened. Stevens and Dole basically overthrew the Queen, and they now want to become part of the United States. And Grover Cleveland like, no, that's not what we do. Put the Queen back on her throne, and that's that. Well, Stevens and Sanford B. Dole aren't going to have any of that, so they say, okay, fine, we'll just declare Hawaii a free republic, and they do that, and it stays a free republic until 1898, when all of a sudden a new president comes to power, McKinley, and he's in favor of annexation. He thinks it's a good idea, and so Hawaii finally becomes annexed and becomes a U.S. territory